Today's topic I want to discuss with you in depth how to avoid the biggest retirement mistakes. And first off, unveil what some of the biggest retirement mistakes are, show you what individuals typically do, how they fall victim to them, and then how they could avoid those mistakes, how they could make sure that they're covering their bases the correct way so that they have pure retirement confidence going forward, whether that is during your accumulation phase, where you might be 5, 10, 15, 20 years out from retirement. How do you make sure that that is segmented successfully, or, even further, when you're, only a couple years out from retirement or currently retired, how do you stay retired forever? So I'm going to break down each big mistake, and there's multiple mistakes out there, but I want to, and a lot of these mistakes actually work in tandem. So I want to try to expose some of these mistakes. Hopefully you're not doing these mistakes and you're able to fix it in time, to make sure that you can also, live that healthy, retirement lifestyle, and make sure that you're just super confident in retirement, because you do have those different areas covered and you understand the pros and cons of each situation. So the very first mistake I want to tackle is running out of money. And a lot of individuals don't realize, how this occurs, and all of a sudden they're looking at their account right when they retire, and a couple of years go by, and all of a sudden they look back at their account and they go, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna run out of money in the next couple of years. What went wrong?" And in order to truly understand this, you have to realize what happened with retirement planning, what happened with employer-sponsored retirement accounts, and then what is the risk for typical individuals as they're getting closer to retirement, or they're currently in retirement. Why is this such a problem now of running out of money? And back in the day, and individuals still are offered these types of plans, an individual would work for a company and they would give X amount of years of service, so 20, 30 years worth of service, and they were offered something through their employer known as a defined benefit plan, also known as a pension plan. So I give the example a lot. I say my grandfather was an elevator mechanic for the city of New York. He was offered a pension plan. He started working for them in his late 20s, and they said, okay, if you give 30 years worth of service, by the time you're age 55 in his case, you've given 30 years worth of service, we will give you a set retirement income stream as a thank you for working for this company, an incentive to stay loyal to us. Make sure that you're working hard, and therefore we'll make sure that your retirement is set up for you so you don't have to try to invest your dollars on the back end. So life used to be a lot more simple. Individuals would work those 20, 30, 40 years in some cases, and then understand that they're having a set retirement dollars, just like Social Security income. There would be money left for them every single month that would get paid to them, that they didn't have to work, so that when he retired, he's able to receive his pension income, able to receive Social Security income if he was age 62, and hopefully those two combinations of income would be able to suffice what him and my grandmother's expenses were. Well, unfortunately, there was a shift that took place. You had the branch of a government was created known as ERISA in 1974, and later on came about 401k related plans, the implementation of 401k related plans in 1978. This is important because rather than that defined benefit plan where an individual would go to work, that company would define exactly what that benefit was going to be. When this ERISA Act was created and then you had the implementation of 401k plans, it now took that risk from the employer, from the entity, and threw it onto the employee. So now, rather than a defined benefit plan, you have these plans known as defined contribution plans, which says, okay, you're going to be working for this company. We might incentivize you to start planning, start putting money aside for retirement, known as a company match, but ultimately it's all on you. If you're making $100,000 in a given year and you decide to put 10% of your salary into your 401k plan, your 401k is going to grow by the contributions going into that bucket, and however well you chose those different options, your different investment options related to that 401k, and whether that received a rate of return would make this bucket increase. If, let's say, you added contributions that year and the rate of return was negative, well, you might have a decrease in that bucket regardless of how many years you've been contributing to it. So the point that I'm trying to make is rather than have that security of saying I had a pension plan or I have a pension plan, now individuals, majority of individuals are on their own and they're trying to create strategies to really maximize that rate of return on their 401k related plans because they're trying to make this bucket as large as possible so that when they retire, they could siphon through these monies a specific way and make sure that they're not outliving their money. So if they retire at age 65, they're hoping that their rate of return will stay consistent and also be able to pull out X amount of thousands of dollars per per month, per year that will suffice exactly what those expenses are. So the entire retirement game has really shifted on its head. So rather than now, you still have some companies. It is very rare, but you still have some companies out there and some entities that offer pension plans. Majority of the plans being offered are employer-sponsored retirement plans, such as the 401k, 403b related accounts, 457 plans, thrift savings plans. There's a whole slew of different sorts of retirement plans available. So if you understand that concept that 401k related plans were implemented right in 1978, and now this is looking at the historical rates of the Dow Jones Industrial Average over the past 100 years, you notice that yes, the Dow Jones Industrial Average did go up, so the market did go up, but now you had this extremely large boom that took place from 1980 all the way through 1999. There's over 1,200% growth into the market. The reason why that chart is so important is because it shows how the mindset was essentially tricked to thinking that if individuals just keep over max funding their 401k related accounts, it doesn't matter what they contributed into their 401k related plan, that rate of return is going to have a very high positive impact. So it basically poisoned the mindset of saying that, okay, it doesn't matter, the market's just always going to go up, and therefore by the time I retire, I could take out very large distributions from my retirement bucket and never worry about outliving it because I have nothing to worry about. The market's just always going to be booming, booming, booming. And unfortunately, we've seen shifts. We saw a shift in 2001. We saw a very large shift in 2008. And it showed us that no, in reality, the market could be volatile. You've had the tech bubble bursting, the Great Recession that occurred, and then on top of it, you now have those baby boomers that were placing dollars into the market now have to sell out of the market, liquidate their shares, liquidate their funds to therefore use as retirement income. So if you have more individuals that are selling out of the market than placing dollars into the market, obviously that could create a problem. So individuals in the 1990s and early 2000s, what they would do is say, okay, well, I'm noticing that the market could potentially go down. I'm just going to take my dollars and I'm going to invest them into a fixed account. Bank CDs are paying 8%. They're paying 10%. Fixed annuities are paying 8%. They're paying 10%. So when somebody's utilizing a fixed account, what they're essentially doing is saying, okay, I have $100,000. And let's say hypothetically you had a fixed account that was paying 10% rate of return. This individual could go get set up into that product. Let's say it was a 5-year product, receive interest each year for those 5 years. So they're receiving $10,000, et cetera, et cetera. After those 5 years, that individual has the $100,000 left over, and therefore they could reinvest it in a new 5-year contract. So, which is not a bad strategy. The only problem is interest rates hit all-time lows. So instead of a bank CD paying or a fixed annuity paying 8-10%, now you're lucky to see a bank CD paying anywhere between 1 to 2% for that same duration of time. A fixed annuity paying 3%, 3 to 4% for that same duration of time. So everything has essentially shifted. You have market volatility, and instead of going into those types of fixed accounts where an individual would just be able to preserve their dollars and live off the interest, that's been thrown out the window. So now, there has to be a strategy in place. So what individuals try to do is they say, okay, well, this market thing, I remember having good growth. Maybe I'll just be a little bit more conservative and still invest in the market, and hopefully everything should work itself out. That hope is the big question mark, and that's where the first retirement mistake is outliving their money. And what I mean by that is a concept known as reverse dollar cost averaging. Let me clear off the screen. So what reverse dollar cost averaging does It's a computation of negative aspects towards retirement accounts that is the leading cause to make individuals outlive their money. So if you take that example where an individual was investing their dollars in their 401k plan, and let's say they retire and they're 65 years old and they decide, okay, I want to start pulling monies from these accounts. Well, what do we understand are the negatives with those types of investment related accounts, whether this is a 401k or an IRA? It all comes down to that rate of return and other things, which are, if you think of this like the term of a bucket, there's little holes poked in the bottom of this bucket, and those little holes are known as fees. So like as an example, you have with an individual like 401k, you have 401k related fees, and typically 401ks have mutual funds in them with very expensive mutual fund related fees. Those are obviously two negatives. Those are the fees coming out of the bucket. Those are the little holes. When we add on a downward market loss like 2001, like 2008, that's going to further compound. That's equivalent to slicing this bucket. Then when you try to pull out income from this account, that's going to be a fourth negative. Then you have to incorporate inflation, because individuals in retirement, some of their expenses are going to be fixed expenses. Other expenses are going to be inflationary expenses, meaning the cost of goods and services are going to be increasing to the pace of inflation. So therefore, it forces individuals to increase that income during retirement, and therefore it's further compounding that negative against the account. So a really quick example, and this is just a hypothetical example on this, just for really easy math. Let's just say if you had 401k related fees of 1% and mutual fund related fees of 1%, and you had a downward market loss of 10%, and this individual took out income. Let's say that this person had, $1 million in their 401k related account. And let's say that the 401k related fee was $10,000, the mutual fund related fees were another $10,000, and they got hit with a 10% loss, which is a $100,000 loss. And let's say this person needed $50,000 of income to live off of for that year, and we're not even going to incorporate inflation. What exactly happened to this bucket? Well, from day one, from the beginning of the year, they walked into the year with $1 million. They walked out of the year with minus $170,000. So then their new account value would be looking at $830,000. That's a large problem, because the next year, even if they gain 10% rate of return, or even if they gain that 10% rate of return on their overall value, that 10% rate of return is not $100,000 anymore. That 10% rate of return is $83,000. So this reverse dollar cost averaging is that compound interest regarding the negatives. So how exactly do you get a chokehold on those negatives? How do you reduce those fees? How do you reduce that downward market losses? How do you make sure that when you're receiving income, you're leveraging your components the correct way? You're leveraging your assets and accounts and income sources the correct way for pure retirement confidence. And the number one thing is you have to be mindful of this. You can't just leave your money to chance and say, oh, I'm going to shoot from the hip and hopefully everything will work itself out. Because this is why time and time again, individuals are outliving their retirement dollars, or on the opposite side, they don't have that much money in retirement. So they have to rely on Social Security income, or they have to work well into their 70s just to be able to make sure that they could have enough income before they pass away. And that's not living. That's just a guess. That's a hope that everything's going to work itself out, and unfortunately the numbers are not in favor of individuals not utilizing a strategy. A big problem with employer-sponsored retirement accounts such as the 401k, 403b, TSP is when I'm talking about the contributions, obviously that's controlled. This rate of return is all determined by what those funds that you choose, how well they perform. So when you have those employer-sponsored retirement plans, you typically are going to have options between 5 to 25, funding options to choose from. So think of them as eggs in your basket. When individuals take money from their employer-sponsored retirement plans and they roll them over into IRAs, individual retirement accounts, they could go and now have 3,000 different combinations, 3,000 different eggs to choose from, so that they can more cherry pick into something more customizable depend upon their need, depend upon what their risk tolerance is, what their income goal is, and try to set that out the right way. The next retirement mistake that occurs when individuals try to do that, whether that's, accumulating their dollars or rolling them into the IRA and just saying, oh, well, I have more eggs, so therefore I should, more options to choose from, so therefore I'm going to be chasing returns and everything should be doing really well. So the negative with chasing returns is leaving yourself exposed to downward market losses and something known as sequence of returns risk. And what sequence of returns risk does is it shows you that, like, when you have an average rate of return, let me pull up a really quick chart. So this is where you have a lot of, wealth accumulation advisors that they're going to talk about, look at the rate of return, look at the rate of return. And with a sequence of returns risk, or just, the risk associated with those negatives, anytime you have a downward market year, and if you're really trying to chase returns and leaving yourself exposed, this is obviously an extreme hypothetical example, but I want to try to, prove my point regarding why negatives could significantly hurt you. And if somebody had a $100,000 investment, and let's say that, on paper it showed that it gained 50% the first year, then it lost 50% the second year, then it gained 50% the third year, lost 50% the fourth year, gained 50% the fifth year, Wall Street math is going to tell us that this person had an average rate of return of 10%. They would have gained plus 50% at the end of those 5 years. Divide that by 5 years would be 10% rate of return. So everything obviously looks on the positive. Well, when we look at the real account value, what occurred, and this is showing that a person is not trying to pull money from this, they would have had that average rate of return, but would have ended up with a value of $84,375. Or if you had $1 million, $843,750 that would have dropped down from that $1 million account. So that would have been a minus 15.625% rate of return in real numbers and real value. That's obviously a problem. So the most important thing, if you're trying to utilize your accumulation, or even when you're in retirement, you're trying to utilize a strategy to avoid reverse dollar cost averaging, above all else, you have to make sure to eliminate those negatives, to try to decrease or have some sort of safety net on there so that you're not having those large swings in the market. And there's a term that I always, or a kind of a phrase that I always say is, negatives in retirement can hurt far worse than gains could help you. And this is showing a chart that if you lost 10% of your portfolio in 1 year, it's going to take you an 11% rate of return just to get back to break even. If, let's say, you go further down, if you lost 30% in your portfolio, it's going to take you 43% just to get back to break even. If you lost 50% in your portfolio, it's going to take you 100% just to get back to break even. So above all else, you have to make sure that you have that safety net in place, or you have certain mechanisms in place to eliminate those negatives and make sure that you're getting that nice safety and consistent rate of return each and every year. Because in your retirement years, when you're not working, when you can't pump more dollars in there, and now you're trying to siphon this out, these are very large impacts, and you don't have that time horizon that maybe if you were in your 20s and your 30s and you had a significant impact or a significant downward loss to increase further. And that concept coincides with a term that I use for wealth accumulation, and I say that this is something that I read in a financial publication. It just always stuck with me, is the acronym of TIME. Stands for taxes, inflation, market losses, and expenses. And when you're accumulating, you want to make sure that your accounts are growing most tax efficiently, that you're beating out the pace of inflation rather than just throwing your money underneath a mattress, that above all else you're avoiding downward market losses. And then the fourth negative is that you're making sure that you're placing your dollars in the most inexpensive plans, or if you're paying a cost, if you're paying some sort of expense, there has to be a benefit tied to it. So whenever you leverage this acronym of TIME, you always keep that in the back of your mind, you could beat out that shift that occurs, or those negatives on how individuals are not able to successfully accumulate their dollars. So the third negative, before I get to the solution, is not using your existing accounts as leverage. There's so many times that individuals have these retirement accounts that are sitting there, or they have income streams that are sitting there, and they don't look at them as retirement assets. What I mean by that is, like, a very large one is Social Security. That is a very large retirement asset. That's a major portion or of a formula to say, how can you retire with pure retirement confidence, is making sure that you're structuring your Social Security maximization strategies properly. Another aspect might be a pension plan. Pension income is obviously income that, rather than increase your expenses and say, okay, I want to take this extra trip when I retire and travel and all this other stuff, if your expenses do not allow and your expenses are at X and your Social Security and pension income just barely beat out those expenses, well, you have to put yourself on a budget. You can't go and say, oh, well, I worked my tail off all my life and now I want to enjoy it and now I just want to burn through all my money. And if you don't have that disciplined mindset, you're never going to be able to properly retire. You're going to fall victim to those large retirement mistakes. And it all comes down to, the culmination of this entire video comes down to not having a plan and just hoping everything will work out. Trusting an advisor because, he's trying to speak in this technical financial jargon and just, talk over you. That's not the correct way to do it, because there's many people out there that have many financial advisors, and unfortunately they're not even beating out what a simple index like an S&P 500 index or Dow Jones Industrial Average index is doing. So there has to be an actual strategy in place, and you have to make sure that you're segmenting your dollars towards specific lanes. A really easy strategy. Obviously, we go into very technical strategies whenever you call over to our agency or you set up an appointment. It's going to be more specific to your individual situation. But a very basic strategy that you guys could use from just watching this video is make sure that you're segmenting your dollars to 3 main goals. Goal number 1 is you have ample amount of income sources. Goal number 2, you have ample amount of emergency funds. Goal number 3, you have inflationary protection or strategy for inflationary protection. We want to make sure that we're leveraging the existing assets properly. So let's say if an individual is currently age 60 and they're going to retire at age 65 and they have a specific need in mind. They're saying at age 65, I need $50,000 of income in retirement to cover my expenses. So the first most important aspect is that need. Rather than take a guess, there's different things out there. You could look at budgeting sheets online. You could give us our agency a call. We could send you over budgeting sheets. But it's all about breaking this down to the decimal point on what are going to be those retirement expenses. So that brings us to step 1, income sources. Remember, we want to leverage what you already have so that you could leave as much money in your pocket, less worry in your pocket at the end of the day. So let's say if this person receives Social Security income, has a small pension, and then they have nothing else. They have basically, we'll say that they have a 401k related plan of $500,000. How exactly can we make sure that these 3 bases are covered? Well, the first thing, let's say that Social Security income is coming to them at $30,000. They hit age 65, Social Security income will be $30,000. Pension income, let's say they have a small pension of another $10,000. What that goes and tells us is that out of their overall picture, and they have obviously a 401k account that's sitting at $500,000. What that goes and tells us is obviously these 2 income sources are giving them $40,000, but they have a $50,000 need, and therefore there's a $10,000 gap. So this is where they could leverage their 401k account, roll that over into a specifically designed IRA account, and this first portion, for the income, we would place it into a safe income product, would be an IRA annuity. If they're currently age 65 and they have 5 years worth of deferral, what we would find them is the best mathematical annuity for that individual dependent upon a state, age 60, looking to trigger lifetime income from an annuity at age 65. So let's say out of this $500,000, it's going to cost this person $100,000 to roll into an IRA annuity, utilizing an income rider that will produce them $10,000 every single year. So out of this $500,000, after after IRA number 1, this person now has $400,000 left over in their 401k account, which now brings us down to step 2. Step 2 is emergency funds. Rule of thumb is that an individual should have in between 6 to 12 months of emergency funds available to them at all times in case of a healthcare related expense, in case of a some sort of emergency that could occur, even if something they want to take a trip or visit family or whatever that is, a death in the family, some sort of oh my gosh moment that occurs. So if this person has $50,000 of income or of expenses per year, we want to leave about $50,000 into some sort of liquid cash. So maybe that means out of this $400,000, they take $50,000 and they place that into a money market IRA. So this is IRA number 2, which is just with a money market. So it's not really going to gain, it's not going to lose. It's just something very safe, like a cash account that's sitting there that this individual could leverage as that type of emergency fund supplement. So now, rather than take the $500,000, and what happens is with a lot of insurance-related agents, what they try to do is say, oh, roll all $500,000 into an IRA annuity, and you'll be fine. You'll have more income than you know what to do with. That's not setting up a plan. That's not setting up a strategy. What that's doing is giving that advisor a nice large lump sum commission, and most likely you never hear from that guy after after months after he sold that to you, or after a year after they sold that to you. It's very, very common. We get these phone calls in every single day into the office of saying, yeah, my advisor set me up a couple of years ago. I never heard from him ever again. So first aspect, a new IRA, number 1 is through an annuity. And it's with a specifically designed hybrid annuity. IRA number 2 is $50,000 through a money market account. And now we have $350,000 left over that we could tie to inflationary protection. What exactly is inflationary protection? Let me clear this off a little bit. Well, we understand that when individuals usually have expenses in retirement, a portion of those are going to be fixed, a portion of those are going to be inflationary. So the cost of goods and services, milk, gasoline, different things, entertainment, are going to increase with the pace of inflation. That's why a house is more expensive today than it was 50 years ago. A car is more expensive today than it was 50 years ago. All these different things are obviously increasing towards that inflationary, towards that purchasing power risk. So therefore, we don't just want to leave it to chance. We want to make sure that you have a plan segmented specifically for that inflationary protection. You could go and leverage a specifically designed IRA account that tries to combat that reverse dollar cost averaging effect. What I mean by that is an IRA that's specifically designed to eliminate downward market losses, to eliminate fees, mutual fund related fees and advisor fees, and allow your money to have that compound interest effect in a positive direction, gaining when the market goes up, but making sure that you have a safety mechanism in place. If the market goes down, falls below 0%, you can never fall below 0%. So that might be one aspect, or you could leverage this towards a managed money route and make sure that you're segmenting dollars on not an emotional based plan, not trying to just go after return, but have something where you're eliminating downward market losses, but trying to really get a nice consistent rate of return. So you could roll that over into specifically designed IRA through managed money route. There's fee-based planners as opposed to retail-based planners. Or you can kind of do a combination of different things. You could also set up something known as annuity laddering strategies to give you, at age 65, you're receiving $50,000 of income from that first income source, and then you might want to place dollars aside into a 7-year deferred annuity, a 10-year deferred annuity, different things that will give you an extra $2,000 at age 67, an extra $4,000 at age 71, another $9,000 at age 76, so that it's saying as your inflationary expenses are increasing, your income streams are also going to be being triggered through the lifetime income riders through those annuity contracts. So this $350,000 in this perfect scenario, we're not leaving the money to chance. We're not just saying, okay, let it ride and risk your money in the market and hopefully everything's going to work itself out. What we're recommending is you create a plan. You don't take a guess. You have a concrete plan so that you have more than enough cash, you have more than enough of an emergency fund, you have more than enough to combat that inflationary protection or to combat that purchasing power risk, and you have those income sources coming to you that you can never outlive, or you and your spouse could never outlive. So in closing, if you found value in this video, feel free to give our 1-800 number a call. It's 1-800-566-1002. We offer 24/7 customer service. You would give us a call mornings, nights, weekends, holidays, whatever the case may be, and someone will take your call. From there, when you're speaking to the assistant, they're going to ask you your information. You might just say, I saw a video online about biggest retirement mistakes. I want to speak to a specialist. And then they're going to go and find the specialist that pertains specifically to this video. That's one way on how to do it. Another way, which is probably more efficient, is to go through our website, which is retiresharp.com or afasifinancial.com. They both take you to the same exact spot. And what you're going to see is a little icon on the bottom right-hand side of the screen where it says to schedule an appointment. So now you could actually put down notes, explain a little bit about your situation so that we can make sure the correct specialist is there available to, sit down with you on the appointment. It syncs it to our calendar. So we have a lot of different open availability regarding the different specialists that you'll be dealing with. And, we'll make sure that that person will give you a call at that specific point in time. What you can expect when dealing with a specialist is to not feel rushed, is to really, have somebody that's asking you questions to try to figure out what your current situation is. Where are you right now at point A? Where do you want to be at point B? What do you have in place? Can you get from point A to point B successfully? Sometimes you can, and we would just say, hey, as a further confirmation, congratulations, you're all set, everything looks perfect. Other times it might just be slight tweaks that you have to make in order to have that slight tweak will have a very large impact and a very large impact on that overall success. So understand, avoid the negatives, avoid the biggest retirement mistakes. I really hope that you found value in this. When dealing with a specialist, we try to educate you first and foremost through personalized videos, literature pieces, different things to make sure that you're very comfortable. We're A+ rated on the Better Business Bureau. We've always had very good reviews. We've never had any complaints, and it's because of this methodical process, or what I believe is because of this methodical process. Thank you very much for watching this video, and please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Retire Sharp, so you can have access to the most updated videos. Thanks so much, guys.